Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Indian B Schools Leadership Conclave. Let us extend a warm welcome to the guest of honor for today's event, Professor 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗏, and the chief guest, Dr. 𝗓𝗲𝗃𝗏𝗏. Dr. Poonia was also to join us for the event, but he had to go for an urgent official engagement, so he would not be able to join us. Once again, let us extend a warm welcome to the guest of honor for today's event. May I request our guest of honor, Professor 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗏, and the chief guest, Dr. 𝗓𝗲𝗃𝗏𝗏, and other dignitaries to please join in the lighting of the ceremonial lamp. Thank you, everyone. We have been through a major disruption, the pandemic that was felt all over the world, forcing us to run the activities online. This also forced the academic leaders, faculty, and policymakers to rethink and reimagine the overall context and purpose of business education. The EPSI, through its conferences, has also been trying to develop a new perspective about the future of business education in India. It has been supported by AICSB, EFMD, and other international bodies. Today, this is the main theme of the conclave, reimagining the Indian business education in the post-pandemic world. May I now request Dr. 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏, alternate president and one of the founding members, EPSI, and director BIMTECH, to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning, and a very warm welcome to our esteemed chief guest and guest of honor on the dais, eminent management educators coming from different parts of the country, faculty members, and also the industry representatives who have joined this conclave today. Respected Dr. 𝗓𝗲𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏, Dr. 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏, Dr. Viswanathan, I would like to present the welcome address as well as the theme address for this conference. We are very happy that three renowned policymakers are addressing the conclave in this inaugural session. Dr. 𝗓𝗲𝗃𝗏𝗏 is a prominent economist in the country. He has served the country by heading the NITI Aayog as its vice chairman during 2017 to 2022, and career as its director and CEO from 2006 to 2010. The EPSI is privileged to have a long association with him since 2011 when he was Secretary General of FICCI and the PGDM institutions standalone B schools were facing some problem regarding their autonomy. Dr. 𝗂𝗂𝗃𝗏 is an ace institution builder in the Indian higher education. He has been involved in institution building at NIT Kurukshetra, Guru Jambheshwar University Hisar and Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi, where he has been the founder VC for 10 years. Since 2019, he has been working as the chairman of the NBA. Dr. M.P. Poonia was supposed to join this inaugural session as keynote speaker, but because of some urgency, he has to go to Gujarat, and his video recorded address will be broadcast in this session. He is an alumnus of IIT Delhi, and he has contributed significantly in the recent transformation of AICTE from merely a regulatory body to mentoring institution in technical education. So we welcome our esteemed guest today in this inaugural session. The fourth time EPSI has organized the Indian B School Leadership Conclave, IBLC. We have been exploring the internationalization and organized the last two conclaves in 2021 and 2019 in collaboration with AICSB and EFMD, as Dr. 𝗕𝗓𝗱𝗶 Singh has mentioned just now. Both times, Honorable Vice President Sri Venkaiah Naidu has been the chief guest. Last year's theme was Business Education 4.0, Futurizing Indian Business School. Today's theme for this conclave is reimagining the Indian business education in the post-pandemic world. We have chosen this theme keeping in mind the devastating impact of the pandemic on humanity and higher education around the world. We are also thinking that pandemic is very soon likely to become endemic. During the last few months, most universities and colleges in India have started working in person. There are 3,400 plus B schools of various kinds and quality in our country. EPSI has successfully brought top 500 B schools in its fold during the last decade of its close association with business education. Globally, during the previous 2 years of COVID-19, there have been a lot of souls searching among big corporates and in higher education, especially among B schools. There has been a paradigm shift in the thinking of business world due to various reasons. The purpose of business is no more maximization of shareholders' wealth, and now it is being replaced by serving the interest of multi-stakeholders. The global agenda of business in the new normal era has now shifted towards diversity, inclusion, sustainability, decarbonization, and human rights. So far, the business world used to remain neutral on political matters. Still, the recent Russia-Ukraine war has forced many of them to stand against Russian aggression and attack on Ukraine. In this inaugural session, we look towards our distinguished guests to know their views about how Indian B schools should move in future to emerge, to embrace global changes in the purpose of business and in the thought process of the business education around the world. The post-pandemic world, being called the new normal many times, is creating new challenges and new opportunities for Indian B schools. Indian B schools will have to strategize for the future, which will never be normal, stable, or predictable. Can we learn from some of the global trends which are likely to emerge in this year and next 1 year or so? Survey done by a business portal from Western World Business because has listed some of the dominant trends which are likely to emerge in business education, and Indian B schools can take a cue from those trends. Number one, great need for customization, flexibility, and lifelong learning at B schools. And this survey is based on the interviews conducted by Business Because portal with some of the Ivy League business schools from Europe and North America. Number two, B schools will have to reimagine their value proposition to face stiff competition from alternate service providers, and alternate service providers are of various kinds and various quality. Number three, adaptation of curricula with looming climate crisis and attainment of SDG 2030. So we are left with only 8 years to achieve SDG 2030, and also the recent Glasgow summit of G24 has presented a very prominent agenda, very dominant agenda for climate crisis being likely to be faced by the world in coming years. Number four, B schools to pay more attention to their carbon footprints. So B schools cannot remain disconnected with their social responsibility, that they should be carbon neutral in their working in campuses. Number five, auditing curriculum so that graduates can meet the world's most pressing problems. So B schools cannot claim that they are teaching fundamentals of business education, but they are also supposed to teach to their graduates that they should become the problem solver in their future roles. Number six, redefining the hybrid learning experience. Hybrid learning experience has taken over during the COVID times, but now all B schools, they should not think that it was needed only during the COVID times. In this year or next few years, it will continue to be the learning model for B schools around the world. Number seven, internationalization will need redefining in the post-COVID-19, and it will not be possible for the physical movements of students and faculty around the world as it used to be before COVID. But now, because of the technology, because of so many innovations in learning models, it will be possible that students studying various B schools around the world, they can join and do collaborative research. Number eight, interdisciplinary education will be needed to produce transformational leaders. So there will be big requirement of liberal arts, humanities, and social sciences to be included in the curriculum of B schools, so that the leaders, future leaders coming out from B schools, they become transformational leaders. Resumption of cross-border travel. So far, during the last 2 years, it has been almost negligible mobility of faculty and students, but now, to some extent, the cross-border travel of faculty and students will resume. Number 10, students will be taught coupling profit with purpose. This is very important, that so far we have been teaching that the purpose of business to maximize the profit or wealth of the shareholders. Now, the students coming out, graduating from B schools, they will need to couple profit with purpose in their future roles. Lastly, will be a big need to rebuild the culture of B schools. Our culture, we have never thought that the communities around the B schools or around the globe, they need big support from the B schools. Now, every auditing, every accrediting, or every external agent is asking from B schools that they should give evidence to what extent they have created impact in the neighboring community, and when COVID was tormenting the global community, what role they have played to safeguard the interest of the communities. So I think these trends are important. It is not necessary that we should follow all these trends and incorporate or embrace in our working, but I think we can gauge some idea about the future, and the future roadmap for B schools in India can be charted out by learning from these trends. There are 4 sessions in today's conclave. The first plenary session, which will be immediately after the inaugural session, it will be on the new normal and the future of Indian B schools. The new normal, I think it has been talked a lot, but definitely new normal is different from the old normal, and new normal will require that B schools and policymakers, they have to sit on across the tables, and they should decide a new model of business education. Second plenary session is on accreditation, ranking, and reputation management. During recent years, even before the COVID, certain policies announced by the Government of India, Ministry of Education, that the universities and colleges around the country, they will have to raise their quality, and the quality will be measured by the accreditation bodies, NAC and NBA. And now it is almost impossible for any well-established B school or a university offering management programs to get good students and good faculty unless they are accredited by NAC or NBA. I think every institution, every B school is trying to get good score from accreditation bodies, but it is not easy. It is very tough challenge for them because it requires a lot of investments in infrastructure, in faculty development, and also in connect with the communities. And B schools, along with other higher educations, they have suffered a lot during COVID times, and they are facing financial challenges to raise resources which are required or needed for getting accreditation from NB and NAC with good scores. Then third session will be on a very interesting issue before Indian B schools, although it is a global trend also. It will be on digitalization and online education, a threat or opportunity for Indian B schools. Digitalization has started, I think, in the last 1 decade, and it was mostly used by universities and colleges for automating their admissions, their placements, and also assessment of students. But now it has become almost a compulsory requirement that any process, any aspect of working of a university or college cannot be done manually very efficiently. But definitely it requires investment, but at the same time it is giving good returns. And the last session we are going to have on National Education Policy 2020, implementation challenges and opportunities for Indian B schools. And you know, we are well aware about the fact that opportunities are many, and NEP, the implementation, it is yet to come in full-fledged manner, particularly in the context of business schools. There is no clarity how we have to adopt a multidisciplinarity, degree granting rights for colleges, 4 years UG courses, and 3,000 students intake to be attained by 2035. So these are 4 opportunities provided by NEP 2020, but still we are waiting for the clear roadmap or clear policies laid down by the regulators. But there are challenges also. We cannot achieve these opportunities unless we meet these challenges. One is roadmap for implementation, which is to be given by the Ministry of Education and regulatory bodies, and funding for implementation, this is also a policy matters. So these are the 4 sessions in which we are going to discuss various aspects of reimagination of business education in today's conclave. I welcome once again all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi, for sharing the trends and issues that B schools are facing or will face in the near future. This has set the tone and agenda for today's event. May I now request Dr. G. Viswanathan, President and Founder, EPSI, and Vice Chancellor, Vellore Institute of Technology, to deliver his address. Sorry. Founder and Chancellor, sorry.
Our chief guest of today, Dr. 𝗕𝗂𝗃, former Vice Chairman of the NITI Aayog. Our guest of honor, Professor Agarwal, Chairman of the National Board of Accreditation. Dr. Chaturvedi, Mr. 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗀, Executive Secretary. directors of business schools, other professors, moderators, and ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to you. It's an important occasion today when we are going to hear the chief guest of honor, and also a number of senior professors of the country who are going to talk to us on the reimaging of the Indian business education in the post-pandemic world. Of course, we have 4 sessions. Ultimately, I feel it should be called more a management education than a business education, because it's not only private business. Those who study this going to manage. They are going to take care of industries. They are going to take care of government, public sector, and ultimately the economy of the country. So I feel that it is more deals with the economic development rather than finding a job. Of course, that's also very important. But the problem in our country is we give them good theory, but they lack practical knowledge. Still, the academia and the industry, still we have not come together. It is time now that we resolve this problem. There are thousands of business schools. In fact, I don't know, probably Chaturvedi may know the number of schools producing both bachelor's and master's, BBA as well as MBA. And I want all of them to be qualified to handle any situation. That is in the hands of the management, and they should be exposed to practical problems, industrial problems, government problem, whatever it is. Our Honorable Prime Minister wants India to reach $10 trillion, the GDP of India. And at present, we are in the 3.2 or 3.3 trillion. So it means that we have to grow 3 times. And the responsibility is more on those who study management and business, because they are the people who are going to manage everything, whether it's private sector or public sector. As it is, if you take the total GDP of the country, we are 5th in the world, next only to US, China, Japan, and Germany. But when you take the per capita income, our ranking is 144 because of the huge population and also increasing inequality in the country. Our per capita income is $2,300. Of course, it is overall average, but India is divided into 2, the poor India and the rich India. Probably we don't discuss this outside, because the poor Indians earn about $1,000 to $1,500. The rich Indians earn more than US. Their per capita is $75,000. That's why the inequality is one of the maximum unequal economy in the world. Probably the only competitor for us is Russia. How are we going to achieve this? As it is, we are growing. We have all the opportunities to grow. And of course, the students who study management, those who are practicing, they have to help the economy to grow. It's not only individual business, but as a country we have to grow. And each individual states have to grow. It's not only government of India, it is individual states. For example, even though the per capita income is $2,300, if you take state-wise, there are number of states who are less than the national average, and there are some states who are above the national average. The big states, like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, their per capita income less than $1,000. Unless they also come up, the nation cannot grow. So these are certain points I would like you to bear this in mind, and especially the youngsters must be aware of this. When somebody is fighting for his survival, especially in the pandemic period, he was unable to earn even 10,000, 15,000 a month, losing his job. There are other side who earns thousands of crores a day. These are all happening in our own country. How are you going to resolve them? With all this, we must grow. Because as it is, we have a possibility of overtaking Germany and Japan to become the third largest economy of the world. They say we may grow up to 8.5 trillion, but our Prime Minister wants us to go to 10 trillion by 2030. Is it possible? And what are the problems we face? We always talk about the management, those talk about SWOT analysis, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Our strength is our young population, the demographic dividend, otherwise called. Because there are countries in the world, a number of countries, 50 to 60 countries, where the population is declining, and especially they have less youngsters than those who receive pension. Take, for example, Japan. That's a major problem. How are we going to take advantage of this situation? So far, the government has not taken any initiative, either the state government or the central government, to find out what is the need of those countries, what kind of training they expect, what kind of people they expect to work there. It is possible to resolve our problem if the government also helps us. In fact, I was thinking whether we can take the initiative as EPSI. We can take the initiative. Of course, without the government help, we cannot do this. If they help us, then we will find out what are the areas where our youngsters can go and work. For example, my own students, VIT students, are working in 84 countries now. Of course, we train them some foreign languages plus other skills, whatever is required by the companies. But as a government, if you are going to get the Ministry of External Affairs and the Ministry of Education together, we can find out the vacancies available in various countries and send our youngsters there. We have enough people who study in lakhs together, and we have to find a placement for them. As it is, ourselves also to grow. Our manufacturing sector, we are lagging behind. In the manufacturing, we contribute only 3% of the world, whereas China contributes nearly 28, 29%. So there is a lot to improve in the manufacturing, where I would very much like the union government, state governments, and the private sector put together. We have to take up manufacturing, and slowly we should cut down the imports. That's what our Prime Minister says, make in India. We have been telling this for a long time. In fact, I remember when I was in Parliament, Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister, used to say, same thing in a different import substitution. She used to call import substitution. Present, our Prime Minister calls it make in India. If we had taken up in the 70s, by this time we would have cut down most of the imports of the country. Even now, every year we have about 100 billion trade deficit, what we export and what we import. Unless we bridge that gap, we can never grow to that extent where we expected to grow. And we have problems. No doubt, as I told you, we have the youngsters, enough youngsters to work. But our democracy has to be strengthened. And the election process has to change. Recently, we had elections, local body elections in Tamil Nadu. I find they have overtaken the assembly election, the parliament election, in paying the voters. I have never seen in any part of the world selling and buying of votes. What kind of democracy we have? And what will be the future of this democracy? Poor and middle class people can never contest election because you will have to spend in crores. This is the kind of country we have, and we have to see that these things are changed. And we have certain things which are common among all of us. Take, for example, corruption, which is there throughout. What have we done to remove it or even to reduce it? Black money and tax evasion is almost there in every house, almost whoever earns. We have not done anything to remove it. Even we don't talk about it. And this inequality will be dangerous to our democracy. Because if somebody goes on earning at others' cost, no doubt the country grows, but the benefits of the growth should reach all. Now it is not going. It is reaching only a few, a small percentage of the population. These are the things I want the youngsters to know and work towards it. Of course, the responsibility is more with the federal government and the state governments. They have to work together. And the business schools, the responsibility is that we must have good teachers where we have a problem. To get good teachers is a real problem. And of course, infrastructure, some of us have good infrastructure, some of us do not. The one thing common to all of us is practical knowledge. In fact, many of them don't visit the factories or wherever manufacturing takes place, business houses, unless we come together. The industries on one side and the business schools on the other side, it will be difficult for them to get practical knowledge. These are the things we are going to discuss throughout. There are many professors who are well versed in this subject. They are going to talk to us. I would like to thank our chief guest, Dr. 𝗕𝗓𝗓, with his vast experience, who has agreed to be with us, and Dr. Agarwal, with his experience for so many years, is going to talk to us. I would like to thank them especially for accepting our invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Viswanathan, for sharing the pressing issues that B schools should focus on. We all in our different capacities have a role to play in that. Now it is time for us to hear from three eminent personalities of the academic world who in their own respective roles as policy makers have contributed to bringing changes to the higher education. Our guest of honor, Dr. M. Poonia, Vice Chairman AICTE, could not join us physically as he had a pressing engagement and had to visit Gujarat. But he has shared his perspective about the future of business and business education through a video. I would now request the team to play the video, please. Can we turn off the light?
I'll congratulate Team EPSI for conducting this very, very important event. What should be the shape of management education after COVID 2019? Now things are becoming normal, and many expectation from the country in management education it is, and certainly role of EPSI will be very, very important. This one-day event where Dr. Rajiv Kumar from Niti Aayog, then Professor K.K. Agarwal, Chairman NBA, Team EPSI, and many experts will be participating. Certainly the dream of the country is access of the education. It should be available for everyone. And very, very important session it has been kept on digital education, online education, and certainly it will be providing access to every student who is dreaming to enter into higher education and particularly into management education. Second, we want equity. All sort of facilities which is required to every individual, that it has to be provided for inclusive education. It may be a disabled boy or girl, or people from socially backward areas or financially backward areas, or from remote areas. Everyone will be having different sort of deficiencies, different sorts of needs. So helping those children and bringing them at a common platform in a common field, our efforts will be something very different, and those different efforts by every individual institutes, it has to be. So access of the education and the equity in the education according to the needs of the children, and finally the quality. Here the accreditation session also it has been kept, that how quality in management education it has to be ensured. And certainly my message to every management teachers and students who are participating here, without actions there is no management education. So important part is confidence building into the minds of the teachers and the students, that every content, every education content which we are delivering to the students, it has to be connected with practical part, the experience part, how they'll be implementing their learning which they are having inside the classes, and that's the most important. While I am defining quality, meaning of that quality is inside the class learning and implementation of that one for the betterment of the society. It is very essential. So these are very important sessions. It has been kept, and our dream of the country is any children who is entering into higher education, he should be having core competencies very strong in the areas. It may be area of human resource, it may be area of information technology, it may be financial management, it may be area of marketing. In those core areas, they should be very strong after 2 years of education. Then they should be professionally competent also. The profession in which they are entering, they should be able to do justice with that one. All sort of values, the ethics, the morals which is needed, it has to be inculcated into the personalities of the students. And finally, the children should be socially relevant. So all sort of sessions which it has been kept into this one, the message it is being given that our children will be far competent, and they'll be delivering not only for the betterment of our country but across the globe. They'll be able to compete, and they'll be bringing laurels for our country. And dream of Honorable Prime Minister of India, that country should become Atmanirbhar. Their role of our management institute, the teachers and students will be very important. Best wishes. Hope this will be a very informative and educative program. It will be.
Dr. Poonia has rightly said, inclusion and equity, this is what we need to focus on, and access to education to all. Experiential learning and social relevance if we want to see the real results. Now let us welcome Guest of Honor, Professor 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗏, Chairman NBA, for his address on the theme of education in the post-pandemic world. Dr. Agarwal has served at several universities in leadership roles. With his rich research and consultancy experience, he has won accolades such as honorary fellowship and lifetime achievement awards. He has been associated with NBA in various capacities. Over to you, sir.
Dr. Rajiv Kumar, former Vice Chairman 𝗔𝗱𝗱𝗏𝗍𝗀, whom I had the privilege of meeting a couple of times to discuss some of the issues on education. Dr. M.P. Poonia, who could not be present amongst us, but a great friend from academia. Dr. Viswanathan, a pioneer of privatization of higher education and the edupreneur of that time, which has translated education into very meaningful, impactful levels. Professor Chaturvedi, who has contributed of decades and decades to management education. Mr. 𝗕𝗏𝗱𝗏𝗍𝗀, the Secretary of Education Promotion Society for India, and many very distinguished professors, leaders of business schools in the country. I see Professor Maitre here, who I have seen contributing very heavily to the management education in the country from various fora, and many of you whom I will not dare naming. Friends, as you might have known, I am not a teacher of management. I am not a teacher of business. I am an engineer by training, and have become manager or leader or whatever to some extent by practice. So it could be a sort of practical demonstration of multidisciplinarity that you have invited me here today amongst all of you, the doyens of business in this country. Friends, when you talk about today the theme of this year's conference, reimagining the Indian business education in the post-pandemic world, I personally feel we always had to reimagine the business education. We were probably not, pardon me saying, doing the business education which really this country needed. And at an affordable price. We in this country have always to strike a balance between quantity and quality. We do have some of the best management institutions in the country, but we also have been flying shy of numbers. Our regulatory bodies were very much concerned that if the number of students become from 60 to 61, heavens will fall. And I am sure many of you must have received explanatory notes why your number of students are 63 instead of 60, as if heavens are going to fall because of these 3 extra numbers. That was our mindset, as if quantity damages the quality per se. I am only here to say it's not true. I am a formal student of quality and reliability, and unless we learn to manage the quality and quantity together, to blame one over the other is a path of least resistance which we adopt. Many of our best institutions will not increase the number of students despite the very heavy financial resources, and when you talk to them, they say, sir, if we increase the numbers, quality will go down. Now, I am not subscribing to this thought process, and that way no big industry should prosper, because if the volume grows, the quality comes down. Why industries are allowed to grow big and big? Universities all over the world have very large sizes. We have no problem. Harvard Business School, whom everybody in this country wishes to count, started with 2,000 schools in the first batch. 2,000 students in the first batch. When I went to Harvard for some lectures, I asked them, out of curiosity of my training in this country, that 60 is the number which is very sacrosanct. I talked to them, how come you admitted 2,000 students in the first batch? And the answer which they gave them was very meaningful. He says, Professor Agarwal, when we admit 2,000 students, then only we will have 4,000 students, and then only we will be able to have 400 best professors in the world. If you have only 100 students, you can have 5 teachers, 7 teachers, 8 teachers. How can you cover all specializations in the best possible manner? So the only method of having the best teachers in all 400 areas in the world is to have 4,000 students. There is no other alternative. And I see nothing wrong in this justification in this. Now, next is the question of implementation. If we want to make a mess of implementation, then please, pardon me, we can do it anywhere. We can play mess with a large institution, we can play mess with a small institution, we can play mess with a large industry, we can play mess with a small industry, but let's not take recourse to the numbers being the inimical cause of education. And therefore, I am very happy that for the first time, in this country at least, a policy has talked of minimum numbers. Otherwise, we were always talking of maximum numbers. It is the first time the policy says a university or an institution should have a minimum of 3,000 students, because we do understand, unless that happens, the balance between quality and quantity cannot come through. You cannot be very satisfied by giving very high quality education to very few number of students. Then where are we? Nowhere. So this is Professor Chaturvedi and then Professor Viswanathan have talked about various very meaningful issues of business education. And I think the summary which has been communicated by both of them is probably the same in different words. And one of the things I believe when you reimagine post-pandemic education, one of the signals is our business students should learn It's not always the value for money which is important. It is the value for many which is important. We have to not be focused only on money. We have to be focused on the society as a whole. And unless we do that, we don't deliver really business education in the right spirit of the word. I have always been saying, maybe Dr. Chaturvedi has heard umpteen number of times, that our first business school in the country was Indian School of Business and Social Welfare. We were very conscious right from day one that business and social welfare have to go together. But one fine day, somebody removed social welfare very quietly and kept it only business. And we kept the business going. It's going in whatever way it can, but social welfare remained in some dream somewhere. And you're talking about post-pandemic. I'm very sure if our managers would have been managers and social welfare, COVID would have done still lesser damage to us than it has done. COVID would not have been avoided, but COVID would have done much less damage if we would have handled. Well, let me say very honestly, India has been one of the best countries in the world to handle COVID. There's no doubt about it. But still, given the diversity of this country, given the numbers of this country, the labor problem, the transportation problem, the food problem, the poverty issues were so many that if the sensitivity towards the society would have been more, probably things could have been less damaging. So I think one of the lessons which we must learn post-pandemic is we wish pandemic doesn't come again. But it is good to live in a scenario of post-pandemic, knowing that this can happen anytime and we have to be sensitive towards the society. A management professional without an eye to the society, according to me, having an eye only on the pay package doesn't serve the society in the same sense. We have to strike a balance between your own good. Please, I am not against your own good. You must make more money. There's nothing wrong in it. And as long as you make money by rightful means, this is the most proficient incentive which can ever have on earth. Nobody gives you a single rupee without work if you don't mean it. So making money is not a crime, but means of making money should be watched into. But at the time of making money, you also keep an eye on the nation, on the society, on the sustainability. Then only we really serve the cause of the country. Sustainability has been mentioned indirectly by Professor Viswanathan as well as Professor Chaturvedi. I think Professor Chaturvedi even talked about 2030 as the ultimate goal of achieving sustainability goals. Well, I am not very sure about 2030 because if I look to the progress so far in the whole world, it has been much less than what it should have been. And I also believe the sustainability goals will never be met fully. See, there are some things which are never met fully, which should never be met fully. I remember a journalist came to me when I was Vice Chancellor and asked me a question, "Sir, when do you think the university will be complete?" And I said, never. A university should never be complete. It should always continue to grow. Similarly, I believe sustainability goals will never be completely fulfilled. We should continue to grow. Our footprint reduction should continue to happen. And that should be the way of working. Friends, we have been talking about innovation, we have been talking about creativity, particularly in the context of national education policy. And I believe, friends, pardon me if I am wrong, you can dismiss it. I believe unless you make sure that your student spends not more than 50% of the time in the classroom, I don't think you are producing the managers of the right kind. They must spend time in case studies, in talking amongst themselves, in group discussions, and so on and so forth. I remember that the very first case study in the world, to my knowledge, maybe you know it better, was in Harvard again, where a professor comes to the class with a plastic bottle, keeps it on the table. He says this world is going to have millions and billions of such bottles. What to do with this bottle after you have finished the water? And they spent 1 hour discussing this. That's the method of case study. Unfortunately, today one publisher tells me, sir, he has made a very good book. I have published the case studies. And sir, I have published the solutions to case studies also. Now, the moment you give solutions to the case studies in a published form, case study ceases to be a case study. Unless you sensitize the mind, I was reading an article, the professor comes to the class, he says, I don't want anything today formally done, but can we think of anything innovative about the umbrella? Now, nobody knew in the class what does he mean. He says, can we talk anything innovatively about the umbrella, just the umbrella? What to do with umbrella? He says, nothing. Word umbrella should be in your mind, and let's see, can we do anything innovatively? And when I read that paper, so many beautiful ideas came. One of them was, when after the rainy season you go to a store, the umbrella wets the complete store. Because everybody walks with an umbrella which is dripping. And many people sleep in the stores and all that. So why can't we have a locker at the gate of the store which can store umbrellas like they can store your books or purses? And idea has been accepted and put in practice. Stores find to keep a person to take care of the umbrellas is much cheaper than to keep wiping off the floor of the store all the day. And it's such a simple idea. Somebody came with an idea, well, most of the time you will be at home if it's raining. Why can't umbrella be used as rain harvesting device? You put umbrellas on the rope and put a cap there with a pipe, watertight pipe, and let umbrellas collect all the rainwater, and which is rainwater harvesting at no cost. A third person said, well, carrying umbrella a whole day, you don't know whether it will rain or not, is a nuisance, but you have to carry. He said, we all wear neckties, we cover it up to here. Why can't umbrella be designed as a dual purpose? It's a tie and an umbrella. So you hang it like a tie and put your button up here. The real umbrella is below it. And when the rain comes, you open the tie and use it as an umbrella. That way you won't have to carry it all through. Another fellow says, you don't put umbrella very much low because it hampers your vision, but you still get wet. Why can't you make a longer umbrella and put a gauze here like we do in a burqa to see the word and make a little longer umbrella? Why I am trying to tell you this is, unless we sensitize the person to think of something out of the blue moon, I don't think we solve the business problems. Because business problems don't give you time, like the examination problems. When I say business problems, I mean administrative problems. They don't tell you that I'm coming tomorrow, please. It's only the examination problems which the student can guess fairly well. You all know business problems cannot be discussed well, and many of them don't have a solution. Finally, friends, I'll just tell you, managers will have to be managers, not the rule book keepers all the time. I'm giving you a very small incident which you will feel. I read it from a book which was gifted to me by one of the business schools, and it's a story about Netflix. It says Netflix made a rule which looks very simple, that if you go out of the town for some official work, you can either hire a car or hire a taxi, but not both. Makes sense. That if you go out, you either hire a car or a taxi, but not both. Now, nobody finds anything wrong with this rule. Fair enough. Somebody went outside. He had to attend a meeting about 100 miles away. So he feels, if I get a taxi, it will cost a hell of a lot. So he hired a car, drove it, attended the meeting. And in the evening, he had to attend a dinner, which included drinks. Now, after drinking, you can't drive the car back, so he had to hire a taxi to come back. So when he gave the bills for the car in the morning and for the taxi in the evening, the accounts clerk objected to, obviously, that you are allowed to hire either a car or a taxi, but not both. He said either way the company would have been loser, because if I would have hired a taxi in the morning also, it would have been very costly. I drove it. And in the evening, I could not have my car anyway. So I did it to save money for you, and you are saying it's against the rules. Now, it was not an easy answer. But finally, after a lot of discussion, Netflix came only with one rule. They say, we can't define the rules. Please, whenever you are outside, do whatever you think is in the best interest of Netflix, and we leave it to you. I think that is what my message to managers and business graduates will be. Do whatever you think in the context of the situation, right for you, right for your country, right for society, right for your profession. Do that, and that will be the best. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this August gathering, the type of which you cannot get every day. And I thank Dr. Chaturvedi, Professor Viswanathan for giving me this occasion. And I hope deliberations during the day will put you at a platform where we can have much more creative students from your institutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Agrawal, for your message that quantity and quality can be balanced, and also what students should do for the society, do for their own business and their own personal growth. Thank you very much. Let us now welcome our chief guest, Professor Rajiv Kumar, former Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. He's an economist who has served as economic advisor and as independent director on the boards of RBI and SBI, and has rich academic and research experience. We welcome you, sir, for your views on the New World Order and the role higher education institutions are going to play.
Shri Viswanathan, the President of EPSI, Dr. Chaturvedi, the alternate President, Mr. Agarwal, Mr. 𝗕𝗏𝗱𝗲𝗋, distinguished guests, and academicians, ladies and gentlemen, friends. It's a great privilege to be here with EPSI again. And I say again because I think I first interacted with EPSI in 2011 or something like that, 2012. 11, I think, and when I first addressed the EPSI, and I want to commend the EPSI for the amazing work that you've been doing, and please carry on with it, and I think you've got a lot more to go for it, and I think you need to do this, and your credibility after 18 years is now well established, and I think EPSI could use this credibility to further drive quality education and access to education, management education going forward. So all strength to you, and I look forward to looking at what successes you achieve going forward. Friends, I think I've been probably invited, maybe also because I have had the experience of teaching in a management school, and the years there were one of the most satisfying at the Institute of Foreign Trade, where I used to teach microeconomics and competitive strategy. And I think that's one of the years that I really look back because, when you see a sparkle in a student's eye, when the sort of thoughts come in, that's the most satisfying thing that you can do, because that's immediate and that's real and that's tangible. You can't do, I've had stints in policy making now in many ways, but that kind of immediate gratification, satisfaction is probably not available everywhere. So I think you lot have a real job on your hands, because you are the interlocutors between the present world and the future world, because you are creating the future world with the students that you have. You are also the interlocutors between the government and the society, between the academia and the society and the government. So you serve so many purposes, you have so many roles, and therefore people in teaching professions, I think the most noble profession in our tradition, always been recognized as such, have a role which I think was epitomized by Kabir. He's saying Guru Gobind Do Khade, and I don't want to repeat that because that's really what it is. So friends, I think this role is very important, and my own understanding is that, and I'm going to talk about something that both Mr. Viswanathan, Mr. Chaturvedi, even all, Dr. Agarwal have all mentioned, which is about a different form of business that we need to evolve in our country as we go forward. But the precondition for that, anything that you have, is to build a trust-based relationship between the government and the society. And that is something that we still, I'm sure, I think in my view, is still not available, is still probably missing. And you can play that role by giving honest feedback, by asking for accountability at all stages, and I think, and training your students to be unafraid of, to be not scared of asking for accountability. Because accountability, accountability, transparency, and proper feedback is the only way we can ensure that the government and society, the government and all other stakeholders work in tandem to serve the national interest, which is what the Honorable Prime Minister has talked about and our eminent speakers here have talked about. We have only one goal for all of us, which is to serve our national interest, which is to take the country forward and make it one of the best in the world. So friends, I think this is the precondition, and what I'm going to talk about now is to say that what we need today, and people have referred to it already, and lots of work has been done, that the capitalism of the Adam Smithian world, the 18th century world, of profit maximization by everyone, is gone, is redundant, is something that we should not even think about and we should not even talk about. We are now in the 21st century, and that something is 4 centuries old. At that time, if you read Marx, if you weren't working in the cities, you were branded by a hot iron with a V called vagrant, and that worker was sent to the workhouses to work for free. That is the kind of capitalism, the origins of capitalism. All that is gone. We now need to, so therefore, people have talked about, people like Professor 𝗓𝗲 and Bentley have talked about conscious capitalism. Others have talked about ESP, which is environment, sustainability, and policy, and people that they've talked about. I'm going to talk about today, friends, about, I think, the new model of capitalism, which is sustainable capitalism. And I think that's what you need today. And sustainable capitalism is something that we need to talk about. Everybody has emphasized this and so on. But I think that's what we need to really talk about. And capitalism it is. Let's not forget that we are not, I'm a firm believer that we can't talk about other forms, other isms, etc., because capitalism enshrines the most important aspect, which is to give greatest support to a greatest freedom for private enterprise, for private spirit, for private talent, for private creativity. And that's what the form is. But it has to be sustainable capitalism. And I have, friends, for you, three components of that. And one, which is, I call it shared prosperity, and which has also been referred to in other words by inequality and etc. Shared prosperity, let me put it like that. The second is, of course, environment. And with all due respect to Mr. Agarwal, if environment is not taken care of and sustainability is not taken care of, we have only one planet to live in. And we have had dinosaurs before. So, I don't know where we need to complete that task. The sooner the better. People tell me from the UN Environment Program that we have only a 20-year window. And you can see the results already. And the third, which is something which is very dear to me, which is our tradition, but we've never talked about, and there are different aspects of it, is spirituality. Because I think that will create sustainable capitalism. Now let me go back to each one of them, and which is that shared prosperity. What do I mean by that? Everybody's talked about inequality. People refer to inequality mostly as income inequality between classes of people, between segments of population. But we also have regional equality in our country. I used to always teach, when I used to teach, I say that India is like that, and if you draw a line here, which passes through Kanpur, which is next to my hometown, Lucknow, the west of it is a crescent of growth, from Delhi to Coimbatore or Delhi to Tamil Nadu and Bangalore, and the east of it is the fist of poverty. Now that cannot happen in our country. We cannot be a China where 500 million, 400 million people move from the coastal states to inner provinces. Because they are a homogeneous society, they can do that. Can we afford to do that? I'm not sure at all. So we need to have regional inequality. We've got to create jobs where people are, where people want to live. Because that kind of migration that we've seen in other countries is something that probably our society will find it very difficult at this stage to give. Now, I think apart from that, we know that old capitalism didn't talk about, and which is gender equality. Why don't we talk about that? The female labor participation rates are going down. Is that what we want? The percentage of women in top managerial positions, despite whatever we say, is minuscule. And so why don't we talk about that and pay attention to that? The other aspect of inequality that I want to say is about equality between stakeholders who are involved in the same corporation. Some people are now trying it through ESOPs, that you make them stakeholders. People are trying. In our country, the only country in the world which is trying to create capitalism in a fully democratic sense, you can't expropriate land as Carnegie and others did in the US. You can't throw the native Indians out and then expropriate the land and drive the railway. We have to make the farmers whose land you are taking partners in your venture. So therefore, I think Mahatma Gandhi's concept of trusteeship must be now brought up and forth, front and middle. Because unless you do that, unless our capitalists, and this is what you need to teach, because your students who may not be promoters, who may not be owners, but they are the ones who are drivers of change, will ensure that the trusteeship model, because without that, in a democratic, diverse, pluralistic country like ours, we will not be able to create the entrepreneurship, the capitalism, the kind of dynamism that we want in our country to go forward. So those are the aspects of shared prosperity. I thought I will share them with you. And one other aspect of that, which is something because I'm passionate about it, is access to quality education and nourishment. 58% of our children being undernourished, 50% of our women with anemia. The inequality starts there. The equality finishes there. How many of our students even think about that? How many of our students have read the National Family Health Survey 5, which has just come out recently, and the numbers that there are? So that's the one that we need to do. And then higher education, about shared prosperity, 27% enrollment ratio that you've got here. You've got to raise it to 50%, 60%. Korea, it is 83%. US, it's 78%. Can we do it? How do we want to do it? Can we do it through mortar and brick institutions? Or will it have to be hybrid, what we call click plus bricks? And how do we develop? Are we developing our MOOCs and so on? I can go on. Let me stop here because I know that time is short and you're all going to be impatient for your tea break very soon. The second aspect is environment. And as I said, as environment, again, you must recognize the uniqueness of this country. You must recognize the uniqueness of this country, that we are the only country in human history which is having to grow at a rapid rate while it's still trying to be green at the same time. Nobody else did it. They all went ahead, did what they went. Thames River, the river Thames was known to be a fact after the Second World War, that if you put your hand in, only half the hand came out. I have personally seen in Turkmenistan the drying up of the Aral Sea. The southern part is completely dried up because the mighty Amu Darya, the Oxus, doesn't reach there anymore, because the Russians drove a canal into Turkmenistan to grow cotton because they did not want to use American cotton for their soldiers' uniform. And the result is that there is no Amu Darya left and Aral is gone. You have seen China, you've seen Japan. We can't do that. We have to become green and grow at the same time. And friends, please believe me that the window is only a 20-year window anymore. We have seen this already. The hottest April, the hottest March in 70 years, the monsoon, etc. These are experts who are telling us this. So therefore, neutrality, carbon neutrality will not work. Adaptation and mitigation will not work. What you have to do is to reverse what you've got. You have to reverse the carbon that is already there in the atmosphere. And I have been in NITI Aayog, and I'm very thrilled to see that the Prime Minister, even yesterday, while talking at Indore, and on the 16th of November, while talking to 70 million farmers, has endorsed the idea that NITI Aayog propagated about agroecology. about coming to agriculture with zero chemicals and zero chemical fertilizers, and zero weedicide and zero pesticide. You've got to increase the carbon content in your soil. It was 2.5% in 1947 when we became independent. 1.5% is required for the soil to remain arable. You know what the state is today? The average national is 0.4%. We've desertified our land, and we've put carbon out there, and we've created cancer trains, and we have created all sorts of problems that we have never had when I was a child. How to put that carbon back? The only way is through agroecology and adapting zero chemical farming, what I call natural farming, which the finance minister thankfully put her in a budget, and the national mission is being formed. Do we want to not teach that? Isn't that a great business proposition to have completely chemical-free products, agricultural products, and then value add them and agro-process them and export them to the rest of the world, which is now wanting this? Shouldn't that be a part of our business strategy? I'm not sure that many business schools teach that as a part of their curriculum. Again, just a last word, you adopt agroecology, and the evidence today from agriculture university is that your water consumption drops by 50%. So your subsidy for power, your subsidy for fertilizers, for everything goes down. It pays for itself. So sustainable environment is the second big component of what I call sustainable capitalism. And finally, friends, and I wish I had more time, and I'll come back to you sometimes to talk about it in greater length, is spirituality. That's our tradition. No Indian is devoid of a factor of spirituality within it. We know that. We are not people who are godless. We are not people who are in any sense so materialistic. We are the people who are taught from the word go as a child that satisfaction is the thing. 𝗕𝗲𝗱𝗏 संतोष सब धन धूर समान. That's not the business proposition that the West teaches. They teach crass consumerism. They teach materialism that will kill us, that is already killing us. Therefore, we should go deep into our spiritual tradition of keeping all of us together and alive, and the 𝗪𝗪 Kutumbakam, or there are so many shlokas that you will find that sustain this. Why not? Why isn't that part of our business education? Because from spirituality, and when you start looking inwards and not outwards all the time, when you're not talking about only my possession, I'm not saying for a minute that you should be depriving yourself. No. Because our dharma is, the grihastha ashram is, where we are sampanna, where we take care of everybody, but in a manner that doesn't spoil the other person's lives or spoil the planet. And spirituality will give us the moral values that we need to inculcate in our education. And that's important, and that's been our tradition. So why not factor this? I would think, actually, and this is what I've discovered in the last 40 years, and before that I wasn't there. I was taught in the West, but since 1988 I've been actually practicing it, and I know that if you practice it, it doesn't take away anything from you. You don't leave the society, but you contribute in much better ways to the society, and that's our tradition. And therefore we could make this the anchor of sustainable capitalism. We have to, friends, find the Indian model of capitalism. And the Chinese have found it because they've completely obliterated the distinction between public sector and private sector. The others have found their own way. We have to find our own unique model of capitalism, and you are the agents, you are the people who would do this. And therefore I appeal to you to really do this, to take it up seriously, these three components, and include it in your curriculum. And a couple of other things, which is that all of this actually can be much better achieved if you focus on the states, on the provinces that you are working in. Because there you will have much better impact, much greater impact. Relate with them, relate with the society. Each of our provinces is like a country with its own traditions, its own culture, its own language. These three aspects can't be taught in English only. They have to be taught in the local language. And this is why the Atal Innovation Mission in Niti Aayog has launched the innovation program in 22 languages now, on my insistence. And that's what they're doing. So that's one part of it. Try and bring in the local flair. Try and bring in which was done by Nai Talim, of Zakir Hussain and K.D. Shimali and others. And that's what, people don't know the names of the rivers around their towns, and they'll talk about only the Missouri and Mississippi and so on. Why not? So that's the other thing. There's one suggestion that I want to make. And finally, which is that we need to have, because access is important, of course, but quality is equally important. And quality means that we should now, and EPSI might be the instrument to do it, and all of you should accept maybe that, have our own Indian system of ranking of universities and our business education. Let's accept that. Let's draw up our own criteria for that. And some people can come together who will not be influenced by all the vested interests and can do this. Because if we do that, and this is what NITI Aayog has been doing, bringing out rankings across all sectors to try and get these states to compete with each other, I think we will achieve both access and quality of management education in this country. Thank you very much for listening to me with such patience.
Thank you, Professor Rajiv Kumar. Of course, all the stakeholders working in tandem can surely bring sustainable capitalism and shared prosperity. We thank our guests, Professor Agarwal and Dr. Rajiv Kumar, for their views on the role B schools are going to play in the future and how to prepare our budding managers. I now request President EPSI, Dr. Viswanathan, to present a memento to Professor Rajiv Kumar as a token of gratitude for his valuable time. Request Dr. Chaturvedi to join him. I would now request Dr. 𝗕𝗲𝗱𝗵𝗍𝗔 to present photo frames to the dignitaries on the dais. Thank you all. Now I would request Mr. 𝗕𝗏𝗱𝗶𝗋𝗻, Executive Secretary, EPSI, to deliver vote of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Honorable Dr. Rajiv Kumar ji, Professor 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗀𝗀 ji, respected office bearers, valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks. I, on behalf of EPSI, Fraternity of Education and other stakeholders of education, convey my deep regards and hearty thanks to Dr. Rajiv Kumar ji, who has accepted our request for gracing the inaugural ceremony and sharing with us his vision of NEP-enabled education of New India to become Vishwaguru. Sir, you also told me to the experience of 2011. I want to put one, remembering you, you are the one has framed for the vision and mission of EPSI in the year of 2005 and 6. And the same way only we are going the same way. And whenever you are in the 𝗕ৃ Aayog also, either it may 𝗕𝗂𝗃 or this thing, we used to ask, you never said no. And you always given the time. Even very recently, you are the one has given for the produce more doctors. Perhaps you may not be remember, I want to recollect this one. Very recently, the NMC was not listened to stakeholders. So that time we approached for that, all that Ministry of Health also. He also not given the time. Then they asked me how to do it or something. Then we approached you. You are the one has suggested to advise for the 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗃 for your member. And he listened patiently. And he has given the recommendation. Based on the recommendation, the minister also has given the views. And they agreed. Now this is the thing, and you are the one. And whenever that Dr. Viswanathan has become the president also, you also told me that now you are having the two barrel guns. One is Dr. Chaturvedi is here and Viswanathan is here. So that you have to take a lead and do it. Now we are having that more than 8,000 people are the members and doing so many angles, and we are doing the work. Thank you very much, sir. And of course, Professor 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗏𝗀𝗀 ji, whenever we are meeting him, he always giving the very good guidance. Very recently, we met for the AICSB, Mr. 𝗕𝗲𝗱𝗶𝗍𝗲 for the managing director of AICSB. He also astonished after that meeting that all that government official, he also astonished. Pally, you are having so much of accreditation work that NBA particular about this one, and we are also thinking about that how to reduce our times or something. So this way, we are having this one. Thank you very much, sir. And of course, our president, Dr. Viswanathan ji, and my mentor, Dr. Chaturvedi, thank you very much, and all other office bearers, that sponsors, that particular about that associate sponsor, No Paper Farms, and this Welltech University, the 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗀𝗀𝗃, mainly for the principal sponsors, BIMTECH, VIT, 𝗬𝑺𝑚, Jaipuriya, IMT, MDA, AICSB, 𝗵𝗵𝗆, MS all other peoples, and in fact, for my colleagues, Mr. Sumit, Mr. Rajendra, my advisors, and particular about my friend Mr. Siddharth Jain, all other friends, all other ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much once again. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.